Alrighty, so in order to make the ball follow the paddle and then be able to launch it, we need two things. We need to tell the ball to follow the paddle, and we need to tell it to launch when we press, I'm going to say spacebar, right? Because that makes sense. So if we look over at our input system actions, uh, we have a jump now, and I'm going to bet jump is matched to spacebar, right? So we're going to use this jump action, even though it says jump, we're going to go ahead and use it as fire, right? Um, Actually, can we rename it? We can. Let's rename it fire and save. Save. So first things first, our paddle probably is going to need, our player controller need to know something about the ball, right? And I think I take that back. What we're going to do is we're going to make a new input action. Let's do the fire part first. I think that'll work a little bit better. So we're going to make a new input action. We're going to call it fire action, right? And we can copy the same line we have for movement action, call it fire action, find fire, but this is going to work a little bit differently because we're not just reading a value. What we're going to do is we're going to say fire action dot performed plus equals, and just trust me on this one, your first time you're going to want to do this, and probably most of the times, press tab. Excellent. Now, delete this. It should have made a new function for you. If it didn't, go ahead and write this. All right, and I want us to delete this throw, right? Because that basically says, "Ooh, you didn't write any code. Let's throw an error." What this is saying is, whenever the fire action is performed, and we could have done canceled, that's when you let go of the button, started, that's when the moment you push the button, started and performed on buttons work very, very similarly. If we hover over, it doesn't give us any like description, but they work very similarly. We've talked about before when a function happens from Unity, when we're talking about collision, it sends over collision information. When an action is performed, an input action, it sends over this input action callback context, and they usually give it this little obj. It's an object, right? It's an object filled with input information. Because the performed action and the started and the canceled sends that information, our function that happens when that action fires off, has to be able to catch that information. You can think of like catching a baseball without a glove, right? If somebody really hit it hard, it's going to hurt, right? And if you don't have this here, you're going to get an error, right? So even if we're not using what's in these parentheses at this very moment, we do still need it. But that aside, what do we want to do when we press the fire action? Well, we want to tell the ball to fire. So let's look at our ball controller. How do we currently fire, in quotes? We do this get component, rigid body, all that stuff. So we can't call start. It's currently a private function. But I could say public void fire and copy this in. And then get rid of this on start. We don't want it to fire right at the get-go. Hold on. I'm actually going to... No, we can get rid of start, because we're going to do that a little bit differently. Okay, alright. I like it. I see it. Now, let's go ahead and see what happens now. We're going to just test it a little bit. Well, fire action, we need to actually get the ball. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say... ball controller B equals find first object by type ball controller. Now, we don't want to be able to just fire this all the time, right? We don't want to fire the ball while it's flying around. So, I think what we're going to need is a variable on here on our ball controller that says, and this one I'm actually going to make no. We're going to say private bool has been fired. And I did it again, like I always do. Has been fired. Because we only want to fire if has been fired equals false. And then we want to say has been fired equals true. Because I'm going to put these side by side so we can actually just look. We're going to be telling the ball controller to fire. Now, no matter what, when you press spacebar, the player controller is going to want to do the fire action, right? It's going to do this. It's going to try and do it, right? Now, the ball needs to know, well, should I fire? Only when it hasn't been fired should it fire, right? So this should keep it from re-going every time. One other small change that we're going to do. This linear velocity 1010 is kind of boring. It always sends it in the right direction, right? So what we're going to do right above it is we're going to say vector2 random direction equals new vector2 random dot range -1 1. We're gonna do the same thing. No, we're going to keep. Is this how we want to do this? I think we'll try it, right? We'll do -10 and 10. And then we'll keep it 10 for the vertical, right? I'm gonna actually pause and look at my notes real quick. Okay, so yeah, I think this is okay. I'm gonna do random direction, -10, -10. I'm actually gonna change it to -1, 1, and 1. Because I want it to, and then in here, I'm going to multiply it by 10. I think that's just going to give you the same thing. It doesn't really matter too much as long as you're getting like a negative in your x and a positive in your a negative and a positive and keeping your y just positive. We should get something unique here that's a little bit different, and we should be able to say, okay, let's fire the ball. Bam, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that just happened to all go in the same direction. All right, but I'm still pressing spacebar, and now I'm getting errors. Why is that? Ball control. There's no ball for it to find. So this is what a common thing that we do. We say if B does not equal null, then we can go ahead and fire it, right? I'm going to go ahead and take this now. Because our ball needs to follow the paddle at start, right? It needs to say, I need to follow. When I've not been fired. And we need to constantly update its location, so this might be one of the times to actually use update. So let's go ahead and put update back in here. And we're going to say if has been fired equals false. Then what? Well, I think this is a time where we want to actually use start because we need to get a hold of our player controller as soon as we spawn in. So let's make a variable for our player controller. And in start, let's find our player controller. And the tab is doing a lot of work for me right now. That's how I'm going so fast. Then in our player controller, it might be worth making a little follow. Now, you know what? We can do it this way. Never mind. We can say, we want to have our position. So that's transform.position equal player controller.position. Let's see what happens. Uh-oh, no reference. Let's say if player... this is actually a good opportunity. You can do compound if statements. Now, you don't want to do this too much. If you start having 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, you probably just want another if statement. But we could say and player controller does not equal null. Now, in class, we'll talk about a couple different operations for, like, you could say or and, you know, all these different kind of, like, combinators for like how to make your if statement work well. But we're going to say if player controller does not equal null, then we want to do that because I think that did goof us up right there. If has been fired. I'm going to pause the video. I'm actually not sure why this is airing out. I'm a fool, that's why. I let the auto. This is why the autocomplete doesn't always work, right? I said that player controller equals get component player controller. We want it to be find object, find first object by type player controller. Goofy object or goofy mistake of mine. Now this should work just fine. We should get the ball to start following the paddle, and damn it, we were close. Right? We need to give it a little bit of an offset. How high does it go above the paddle? Right? So I'm going to go ahead and make really quick a little serialized field on our ball and say it's a float vertical paddle offset. You can name it whatever you want. That's just what I wanted to name it. And because we're going to be changing up a position, we do have to say it's a new vector 2 when we're updating things, dot x, and we're going to do the same thing, dot y plus, I forgot dot position dot y, vertical paddle offset. Does it? Oh, I need to do a plus, not a comma there. Looking pretty good. So with that, we should be able to. I'm going to do this in play mode because I don't know what the number is off the top of my head. There's that. I'm going to watch it float. I like it. I like it. So 1 is actually pretty good. Let's go ahead and change the ball to 1. Now, this is going to be very important because there is going to be a bug, and I'm curious to see. Pause the video and try and see what you think it might be. Why did I go back? I didn't edit the prefab. I edited the object in the scene, the ball that's already here. So I'm going to go ahead and apply it. And I think this is actually, hold on. I'm going to put my random.range back to tens and get rid of this multiplication because it's going just straight up and down. I need that range across, right? So now let's try it one more time. And look, we have a game we can play. Now, the very last thing we're going to do is make a win screen and a lose screen. We're going to go ahead really quickly, create, not empty. I'm going to create a image in my canvas. I'm going to call it win screen. Now, with my win screen, I'm going to click on this little target, and a cheat to make it always take up the entire screen is holding Alt and Shift and hitting this bottom right corner. It's blinding, right? I'm pale as hell. I'm going to make it a little darker, make it a little transparent, and put a text box in it. Go. I'm going to center the text, make it a little bit bigger, and say, you win. What? I don't know if I really like that. Go back to my game manager real quick. Because you might be thinking, ooh, we can make a win screen, we can make a lose screen, but what if we just made one that changed based off of if you won or lost? We're going to make a new game object called end screen. And we're going to make another TextMesh Pro TMP text called end text. This is going to save us a little bit of time, right? Now, if you wanted a big, complex win and lose screen, absolutely make two, right? But when we lose the game, or let's just say public, let's make a new function, public void toggle end screen. Okay. Now, if we win the game, I'm going to go ahead and say that we want to stop the ball immediately because we don't want the lose screen then to pop up, right? We want to say find object of type. Let's do find first object by type ball controller, and we're going to find its, we're going to just say game object that set active false. What this does is it just turns off the game object, right? It stops it. It doesn't destroy it, but it stops it. And then we're going to say, let's turn on, let's toggle the win screen, right? So toggle end screen. And same thing here, right? And when we lose, we want to toggle end screen. But did we win or lose? We're going to use something called a parameter, and we've used it a little bit. We've seen the input action, the callback context, and we've seen the collision data come in. We're going to say, we're going to make our own and say, bool, did we win? Right? So we can add a variable after variable. We could say float, cool number. You know, we can keep adding things here for more information. And you'll notice now I'm getting errors because it's saying, well, you can't call this function without telling me did we win and what's the cool number. I'm going to delete the cool number because we don't need that. Just did we win? And there's two values for a Boolean, true and false. So if we lost a life, we're going to say false. And if we increase the score and we won, we're going to say true. And then in here, we can use that information. We say, well, if did we win equals true, let's set the text that we did, this end text, dot text to, you won, semicolon, else end text dot text equals you lost, semicolon, and then turn on the end screen. I goofed there. And finally, I want to write one more function, and we'll show how we use it in a minute. Public void restart game. And that's going to be, we're going to need to add another using Unity Engine, scene management. We're going to say scene manager load scene 0. Because there's only one level in our game, and computers start counting things with the number 0. So this is our very first level. What this scene management does is it allows us to work with different scenes. It allows us to mess around with them. So when are we calling restart game? We'll talk about that in just a minute. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So let's go ahead and go mess around with our game manager a little bit in here. We have our game manager. Well, what's our end screen? It's this whole, let's rename it end screen. We're going to click on our game manager and drag the end screen in. And we're going to do the same thing with the text. We're going to drag that in. Now, I'm going to cheat and make my score 3,900 just for testing. These are the kinds of things that you want to get going because right out the gate, you do not want to be testing and having to hit every single brick in order to make sure that like your code is working. Let's try and win the game. It's going to be really hard. Bonk. You won! Yay. I'm going to set that back to 0, and I'm going to give myself only 1 life. My dogs are being goofy. Hold on. This is one of the perks. She's a big blep. You lost! But we can't restart. Well, go back to our canvas and let's turn on our end screen. And let's add UI, a button. Really small. It's really boring. And I'm going to go ahead and increase the size of it. Put it right in the middle. Lower it. And say restart. Okay. Now, buttons are a little weird. They have this little on-click box. And if I hit the plus, where do we code restart game? Pretty sure in our game manager. I'm going to drag that into here. No function. Well, I don't know what game object is. I don't know what transfer. I do know what the game manager script is. I can call restart game just like that. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn off the end screen. I'm going to lose my game again very, very quickly. Hit restart, and look at that. There we go. Easy peasy. Now, one thing I'm noticing is test text is still up there. Actually, a good way to show it. In code, we're setting our lives on start to 1. Now, that is the way I would go about doing things. But if I go over to my score, I can just write in here, score is 0 to start, right? And then it is a quick fix that I don't have to go in to update any code for. Sometimes you need those kind of quick fixes. But I think we just made Brick Breaker. There's, of course, some things we could change, right? We could make R restart the game. We can press escape to quit. In my 110 class, we probably did that in person. But otherwise, good job, everybody. You just made your first game. That could be playable all the way through. You can win, you can lose. There's no sound effects or anything like that, but we'll get into that with the next game. So, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. There's a million different ways we could have done everything in here. And keep on making games.